Hello everyone, welcome back to Vickie's Country Home. There's a lot of people that are now getting interested in making their own breads, which is wonderful, but there's a lot that are also starting to grind their own grains. I like that because your flour hasn't been sitting around. It's going to be more nutritious from using it fresh ground. So today I'm going to make a pretty easy bread recipe that uses fresh milled grain. Now, fresh milled grain might not work exactly like what you buy. It will probably require more water or liquid. So it's important to know what to look for and how to do it. I'm following a recipe that I understand works very well with fresh milled grain. This is not my own recipe. I'm getting this from Felicia Jocelyn, and I encourage you to go look up grainsandgrit.com. Very knowledgeable person. So we're going to give her recipe a try and hopefully show you that it is doable, it is easy, but just be aware there may be some differences from the stuff you buy at the store. So if we're going to make bread from fresh milled flour, the first step is you have to mill the flour. I have the Mock Mill 200. I love it. The Mock Mill 100 is also great. I wanted a little bit heftier one because when I do this, I like to do a fair amount. But I've heard that that one works just as well. And I'm going to be using non-GMO hard white wheat. And I store it in glass and vacuum seal it because I don't think it needs the vacuum seal, but I like that, just helps with freshness. And also in a glass jar keeps critters out, which is important to me. So I'm going to turn my mill on, and this recipe calls for 9 to 9.5 cups of fresh milled flour. I understand it's going to take about 6 cups of wheat berries to get that. So I'm going to get this started. But I also know this tends to go into the air everywhere, so I'm going to cover it with a tea towel. So that took a few minutes. I didn't time it, maybe 5 minutes. And I got a little bit on the counter, but I didn't have the dust everywhere. So I'm gonna do this from now on because it covered everything. So that is 6 cups of ground wheat berries. Now let's start making the bread. Okay, we've got the flour milled. Now I'm going to measure out my 9 to 9.5 cups. And measuring your flour seems like a little thing, but it's very important. And if you have weights, that's the best way. This recipe does not go by weights, it goes by measurements. And it takes 9 to 9.5 cups. So there is 1 cup. And what I like to do is spoon it lightly into my dry measure cup. And this is still warm. We're making bread that fresh. So I'm gonna just lightly measure, scoop it in there. And I'm just using my debubbler from canning because it's convenient and it's got a flat edge. I tap it and then I just use this to level it. That's 2. This is 5. I'm gonna stop here because I'm gonna add my flour in 2 batches. So to start out, I'm gonna pour 3 3/4 cups of warm water, and you need to have it between 110 and 115 degrees. Now we're gonna add the yeast. You need active dry yeast, and there's 1, 2, and 1/4 tablespoons. Now we're going to add, and I'm just going to turn that on low so we can be mixing a little bit. And I'm scooping this out of my pre-measured, so I don't need to worry about how I measure it. I'm going to add about 3 cups. I'm just going to put that on low for a couple of minutes to let it mix that up so we can proof our yeast. In the meantime, I'm going to complete measuring. I had 5 cups measured. Now I'm going to add another 4 cups. And I'm going to scrape this just a bit and let it sit. My yeast has been proofed, and I don't know if you can see that it's pretty bubbly. It's been probably 15 minutes, maybe slightly more. Now we're going to add the rest of our ingredients. So I have 1/2 cup of oil, and I'm using olive oil. 1/2 cup of honey that I poured into the oil to make it a little bit easier to measure and get out of the cup. Which is great because that didn't take much work to get that out of there. I have 3 1/2 teaspoons of salt. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to mix those in slightly. And I love this Nutrimil Artiste. It got this huge bowl and it can handle this. All right, now I'm going to add most of the flour. So I've got 9 cups total measured and we used 3. So I'm going to put most of this, but save back maybe a cup. Because it's better to add less and be able to add it than it is to add too much. So I've got that in there. Okay, now I'm going to put the cover on this because I don't want going everywhere. So I'm just going to put this again on 1 and let it get it mixed up. And then I can leave it on 1 or I can turn it up to 2. And just so you can see, that was 6 cups of wheat berries, and I measured out 9 cups, and you can see it's pretty close. It said 6 cups to make 9.5 cups of ground wheat. And this is going to be a whole wheat loaf, but it's going to be white, hard wheat. You can see it's mixed this already. It's pretty well mixed. Now I'm just going to let it knead. Probably start with 4 to 5 minutes and look at it, and if it looks like it needs more, we can go longer. And this still looks pretty wet, which I expected, so I'm going to add a little more flour, a couple tablespoons, and then we'll see how it looks. While I'm waiting for the dough to knead, I think I'm going to add a little bit more flour. That's maybe half a cup I've added. We're still below the 9 cups. While I'm waiting for that, this is going to make 3 loaves of bread. Normally about 1 pound loaves, I believe, but I have 2 size pans. This one's a little bigger, these are smaller. These are actually Pullman pans, so you put a cover on it so it makes a flat loaf. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that or not, we'll see, but I'm going to go ahead and oil these, and I'm using olive oil since that's what we have in our dough. A USA pan, which I've heard you don't have to oil them. Some people do, some people don't. I'm going to go ahead and oil it. And these actually have some little holes on the bottom, so when you're baking these covered, air or steam escape. And I love having my olive oil in a spray bottle because I use it all the time and it's just so convenient. Add just a little bit more flour. We don't want to add too much. And it is pulling away from the sides, but it's still pretty sticky. So now that the dough is pulling away from the sides, that's when you start timing your kneading. Now, depending on what you're using, it may take longer, but we're going to say 4 to 5 minutes with this machine. It may take longer, but we don't want to over-knead it. It's been about 5 or 6 minutes. So you can see it's forming a ball, pulling away from the sides. And what we're looking for is a soft, stretchy dough. It might be slightly sticky, but what we're looking for is a window pane. So if you grab the dough and gently pull, you'll see it's tearing. That means it's not ready yet. We need to let the gluten develop a little bit more. So let's put it back on. I've let this go several more minutes. And we're going to check it. Slightly sticky. It's almost there. It did tear before it reached a window pane. You want it, window pane is when you stretch it and it doesn't break and it gets really thin. That is, when you've got that, you know that your dough is where you want it to be. So I let this go longer, and I actually sped this up to 2 on the dial because I had it on 1 and it was taking longer. I was trying to be cautious. But as you can see, I have window pane. You can see light through this. This is what we're looking for. So now we're going to take this out and form our loaves. And I like to work with wet hands with dough. I think it makes it easier. I'm going to lightly flour. I don't want it heavy because I don't want to incorporate a whole lot into my dough. Now, if you're doing this by hand, it's going to take you a little while. Could be 15-20 minutes. If you're doing it with a lighter weight mixer, it could take a while also. This is a heavy dough because it's whole wheat. I'm not really kneading it here. I'm just trying to get, let me see if I can get you a little bit better. And more flour. I just want to get it to a point where I can divide the loaves. And because one of my pans is bigger, I'm going to not do equal parts. Maybe that's a little too big. Let's do it that way. And we're just going to shape our loaves. again, I've got these oil. Spread it around just a bit again. It's kind of settled. And put it in the pans. And I'm not real fussy about how I do this, but I spread it out just a little bit. Fold it under. This will be the bottom. Approximate size of the pan, doesn't have to be exact because you're going to squish it in there. All right, I have all 3 loaves in the pans. And I'm gonna let these rise. Now, in normal bread pans, you're gonna let this rise to about 1 inch above the top. These are very deep, so I'm not gonna let it go that much. I'm gonna cover these probably with plastic wrap. Because of our dry climate, it'll form a crust, even with a tea towel. So I'm gonna cover it with wrap just to keep them moist, so they'll continue to rise. And probably around double. So it's been about 20 minutes, and the one on the right, the big loaf, it's ready to go in the oven. These other 2 won't be very long. They'll be there soon because they had a lot less dough in them. So they need to rise just a little bit more. But this one's going in the oven, 350 degrees preheated for about 35 minutes, but we're looking for the top to be a nice medium golden brown. It's been about 7 or 8 minutes since I put the larger loaf in the oven, and I think these are fully risen enough to put them in the oven now. So I'm going to add them and time them for about 35 minutes also. I baked these loaves. These were 35 minutes for the 2 smaller ones, and this larger one took 45 minutes because it is much larger. So they actually came out of the oven about the same time. Now what we want to do, they have rested 10 minutes in the pans. So it's time to turn them out. And this is what it looks like. I'm actually going to leave them on their sides to cool. Move this right here. Now you can see a little better, and this is not going to tip over. So there's the 2 small loaves. I'm going to let those cool just like that on their sides. And this is the larger loaf. I'm going to tell you, this one just came out beautiful. Look at how tall that one got. So now I'm going to let these cool completely. I know it's so tempting to cut into them and have some fresh bread. But if you do that, it's going to get gummy inside and it's just not going to be good. Wait till they're totally cool. Okay, it's always hard to wait when bread is cooling, but it's cooled off. And I'm going to cut this and we're going to have a taste. And that's what it looks like. It's nice and soft inside, and it's pretty soft crust also. Beautiful slice of bread. Now's the good part. I get to taste it. It doesn't taste heavy like whole grains sometimes do. And again, it's very soft. And just has a wonderful flavor. This would be perfect for sandwiches or toast or whatever. I really like this and would make it again. And a very short process, considering this is from wheat berries all the way to having a taste. Maybe 4 hours total, start to finish, until it's cool enough to eat, which isn't bad for fresh bread. Very nice. I will make this again. This was with hard white wheat berries. You could make it with red wheat. I may try it with some of the ancient grains next. I don't know. But really a nice tasting bread, nice texture. This would be good for sandwiches. And you can see how well this rose up. So this recipe is a hit, and thank you for watching. I'll leave a link below for where to find the recipe. Thank you for watching, and God bless.